And next on the list, I guess I'll take the lead here. And this is a series that kind of got on social media for a little bit. It became a more of a niche hit, and it is called Butareba. So that's the abbreviation. The story of a the story of a man who turned into pig. That's the, I believe, English localization. In the Japanese title is Buta no reba wa Kanetsu Shiro. So heat the pig liver to if you transliterate it. So the long and the short of it is I'll read the premise and then go back into the casting staff, audiovisual stuff. Uh, the It's just like a standard. Somebody gets like uh some otaku awakens in the body of a pig after he passes out while eating raw pig liver. Um, and this pig is this otaku now in the body of a pig is in a fantasy isekai world with magic and all this crap. Um, and he finds himself next to a person named Jess, a girl who can read, people's minds because she's of a certain race. Um, and obviously that means that she can read the main protagonist's mind and thoughts, even though he is a pig. So then they get along together and they go out and on their journey because Jess is going on a slightly dangerous journey. And along the way, they meet all sorts of people and more and more mysteries about the world, and of course, Jess herself are uncovered. And sort of the end goal for the otaku slash main protagonist turned pig, obviously, is to turn back into human. So that's sort of the long and short of it. And then it's kind of like a mix of a journey plus isekai plus slow life ish mixed with a little bit of drama kind of thing. It's a very standard. In my opinion, I think the core is a little bit more of a journey slash slow life series, but again with the lore of the world mixed in, but it's not much more than that. The staffing is essentially uh, s- the animation production is project number 9. You guys might know this from stuff like uh, bottom tier character Tomozaki, stuff like the Angels Next Door Spoils Me Rotten, as well as some of their more infamous stuff such as Tenshi no Sanpi, Angels 3 piece, as well as Rokubyu, and some of the other stuff as well. They've obviously worked recently My Sister's Unusual. They've obviously worked in between for a lot of stuff as well. Uh, the team for this is essentially the director and the character designer behind The Angel Next Door Spoils Me Rotten, director in Takahashi Masayuki, as well as the character designer, I believe, in Watanabe Susumu. They have gathered underneath them a mix of subcontractors from a 3D CGI studio called Wired, as well as some background art stuff called um, Design Office Mechamen, plus some general industry veterans. They've collected them together to create this series. Overall, I guess this is a pretty stable, I would say, staff casting. The audiovisuals are pretty decent. It's like nothing stand out, but palettes and the visual quality are workable and serviceable. And nothing to kind of grimace over or anything like that. So pretty good. The opening is watashi ga warau ryu wa, or also known as The Reason Why I Laugh by Asuka, and the ending is Hitori janai yo, or also known as I'm Not Alone by Miyuk. Neither of them are very standout. I kind of listened to them and I was just like, oh, okay, this is very standard kind of stuff, like anime song stuff that you would just get for some, White Fox or Silver Link or any other kind of very standard isekai rom-com kind of thing. Um, Although this is more of like a slow life, so it kind of, I guess, it did fit better than maybe Yoasobi did for Free Ren, but that's not a very high bar now, is it? So that's more or less how the audiovisual is. The casting is pretty good. right now for the voice acting cast. It is Yoshitsugu Matsuoka as the main character slash pig, and he goes up, down, left, right, and everywhere, just like through the roof, down into the ground. Just he is very because he's uh, much like a lot of these other recent non-human protagonists in an isekai series, like Vending Machine Isekai, like Sword Daddy Isekai, a couple of others. The point is that they are supposed to help bring in this comedic bent while also still being able to be the protagonist, right? Go through all these introspections and be serious when the story turns to a more serious bent. So they have to balance this whole, being a pig or being a vending machine or being a sword with the rest of the plot of the story. And in that sense, I think Matsuko Yusuke obviously does a very good job. I think he he really balances the seriousness and the or switches back and forth between the seriousness and the comedic bent very, 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 very well. And obviously that was a thing for him when he was doing villain roles, right? For instance, in Licorice Rico, when he was doing that one like psychopath guy in like the main villain of the series, right? So I think he does a very good job switching moods and switching tensions, perhaps even more so than somebody like Fukuyama Jun, where obviously he does everything very well. Fukuyama does everything very well, but I think his voice when he's acting these series out always has a slightly more comedic bent um, than people might be expecting, which is not bad, but obviously then the anime becomes more and more and more like constantly comedic instead of being serious at sometimes and being funny at other times. So I think again, Matsuko Yusuke does a very good job with that. The Obviously there are other characters coming down the list, all very most of them like standard A-listers, right? Mamiko Noto Mamiko, Ito Kento, Tomita Miyu, right? Uh, Again, very standard A-listers. And of course, the heroine is voiced by the famous voice actress who has now come out of hiatus due to, recovering from her, I believe, surgery, right? Or illness, I believe. It is none other than Kusunoki Tomori, right? So she has come back, and for this one, she is doing a voice that is about as high as a couple atmospheres up. She is doing a falsetto to end all falsettos, and I think that she obviously does a good job because she is a very capable voice actress. But it is definitely a slight change of pace from um, some of her previous roles. Although obviously she has had experience with this sort of stuff before. So overall, very satisfactory voice acting cast, along with, again, as I mentioned, the veteran staffing for the series. Now, what are the 4 episodes of Butareba like? So, again, I know that there is a little bit of a fuss over this series because the part of the pig's dialogue, right? So, a lot of times the pig's dialogue when the author is trying to flesh out sort of the rom-com fantasies portion of the web novel or the light novel is the pig going like, "Oh man, uh like Jess has a skirt that frills that flutters in the wind and here and there maybe you can catch a glimpse of the white panties underneath," or like he goes on these like very elaborate monologues that are obviously supposed to how do I say that eke out some value for those people who are reading or watching this stuff expecting a little bit more of a standard isekai slow life bent. And I know some people were a little bit miffed over this. I personally am kind of just like, oh yeah, this is mean, this is like very standard structure at this point, so I'm kind of whatever on it. But I think there is a major flaw yet that this series doesn't deal with very well, even within the context, even within the structure of a standard isekai series. And what I think its major flaw is that the series focuses on the series focuses on the lore too much and not enough of the characters. And I don't know whether that's just the anime's fault or whether this is sort of how it is in the light novel or the web novel as well. But the characters are just like if you had to describe the nuance and the reason why like things are happening and what the characters are like to each other and predicting how they would interact with each other organically within the context of the story, it would be a little bit hard to do so because the pig, the main character, is sort of again just the he's just he has this like lucky skibbe kind of like pervert moments, but for the most part, he's just like a very general, nice guy who helps out and sees the girl, sees the damsel in distress, and goes, "No, I must help her," or whatever. There's really not much there, and the actual sort of general character and philosophy of that pig is not really elaborated much on in 4 episodes. And you might say, oh, it's just 4 episodes, but you have to think that's already 1/3 of the season gone. 2 more episodes of, dilly dallying or maybe another mini arc or the two getting chased down the alleyways, and that's already half the season gone. And they haven't really gone into the main character really at all. And I think it's similar with the main heroine where her personality itself is just like, oh, I'm just shy, and I'm eventually gonna unspool all my secrets, but I wish I could just find a prince in shining armor that I could trust. And then obviously, the more and more she trusts the pig, the more and more the main character inside the pig kind of becomes the object of adoration for the girl, right? But you might say, okay, well, there are other parts in the story where she's talking and she brings up and she advances the story. But I would say that the parts of the story where she's continuing her journey and where her race, her previous deeds lead to um, these mini arcs that the main character and the heroine have to solve, those are that is much more heavily part of the lore, like her being of a certain race, and that race being, hunted down or whatever, or like she now has to dodge people because of problems with quote unquote problems in society with her race, or her having this, these sorts of needs, and then them doing like a mini arc on it. um these sorts of like she needs these sorts of materials to do like magic tricks or whatever it is, and that leads into a mini arc. These are all primarily ideas that propagate the world building, the lore, the background setting of the story, of the world in the story, and not really the character personally themselves. And that's what kind of disappoints me because I think the story sure can move forward just mainly by them journeying around and seeing how that sort of world building pans out from the author. Like, oh, what happens when all these people are persecuted because of their race, and then these things happen, and then what happens if you steal this magic thing and then use it here, whatever it is, right? Um, I think obviously a story can be advanced using that like world building lore, but I would still like to see more character building, like personal traits, personal responses to things from the main character or towards the main character instead of just, oh, these are all happening because my race was, I'm a secret race of people who are always persecuted, and then I have XYZ and the other thing. And again, that's much more world building specifically for the story than it is your character or how the girl is going to interact or how the pig is going to interact. So I was pretty disappointed because the characters were middling and a lot of the sort of quote unquote good parts of the story came from the lore. So I always am a proponent of prioritizing the characters first before, you fleshing out the world in full. But it's a it's a flaw that I think really kind of makes this anime very, very vanilla, and it's very unfortunate to see it go that way. So, but yeah, that's sort of all the major point I had about Butareba. The lore is relatively strong, but the characters are kind of they're not detached from the lore, but they don't really add anything to the lore. They don't add anything to the storytelling while the lore is being elaborated upon. So I think that's a very fatal flaw of the series. Um, what would I? That's pretty much all I have for Butareba. There's like not that much to talk about. It was a little bit disappointing, but not in the ways that some people mentioned in on social media. It's a little bit just more of the fact that the story wouldn't go anywhere if it wasn't for the fact that magic needs to exist in a certain way, or um, certain races are being persecuted, and then it's always like that sort of talk in every episode. Um, as for the Mal score, what would I give it? Uh, I think I would give it a 4 because I think trying to make a story like this where you're very so like almost crutch levels of heavy depending on the depending on the world's lore to write out your stories for you while having weak characters, I think that's definitely something that I would consider slightly below average. And so I can't really give it anything higher than a 5. So I will give it a 4. But yeah, that's sort of all I really had about Butareva. There wasn't anything like much deeper or anything like that. It was mostly just the girl and the pig traveling around. And then during the travels, various things happen. So that's all I had again for Butareba. Again, this is a novel. This is a I no, this is originally a web novel original. Came over to a light novel and then again went through the standard treatment, manga, anime adaptation, stuff like that. So the full title localized is The Story of a Man Turned into a Pig, Butareba, Buta Liver, also known as He the Pig Liver, also known as Butareba, also known as Butanoreba Kanetsu Shiro. So if you do like kind of um like having the hero and like I guess the cute hero and just like kind of just following the pig around and the pig because he's a Japanese protagonist, he can think of smart plans on the spot. If you like seeing that sort of stuff, and plus add on the isekai slow life stuff, I guess please do check it out. But I wouldn't say it's very special. And again, there's sort of a gapping hole in the middle that kind of makes it a little bit of a problem. So